This is Vectis Radio.
So you're listening to Vectis Radio. It's a Tuesday, and I'm privileged to be able to introduce David Icke to Vectis Radio once again. Morning, David. How are you?
Hello, Ian.
It's lovely out there, isn't it?
It's beautiful. It's especially lovely on a day like this in Ryde High Street, where people are falling on their backsides today, as they always do when it's wet out there. And we've got an Isle of Wight council that wants to fleece everybody through every source possible, and they can't even replace lethal, bloody, slippery paved stones with ones that people won't slip on. You know, it's absolutely unbelievable. It goes on year after year after year.
Do you know what? Maybe because they will be listening. Because last year, when you were on last year, they were listening down there. Because when we had a meeting with them, they commented on you being in. So they are listening. So maybe that's a message, and maybe they will do something about it.
They're too busy being corrupt, mate. and incompetent. I mean, you know, the people that run this island and effectively control the council, not even on the council. It's the Isle of Wight bloody mafia that run the drugs and do the dodgy property deals to launder drug money, who make sure decisions are made on the council to suit them in terms of what they want, and all that's going on, and people are creaming off unbelievable amounts of money from these deals, including deals through the council, which are supposed to serve the people, and they can't even replace paving stones on a very short section of Ryde pavement. And how on earth little old ladies and frail people actually stay on their feet? It's ridiculous. It's so bad, and nothing's ever done. Because that, you know, there are some decent people in the council, as there always are in every organisation, but like most government, in fact these days probably all government basically, they don't serve the people at all. It's the tail wagging the dog. You know, councils and governments don't serve the people serve the governments and the councils, and you know, it's the same everywhere, all over the world now. There's been this great seed change in the dynamics of the relationship between authority and the population.
Do you know what? I can't disagree with anything you've just said, but there are a number of people. I was going to start the interview by saying that you are a fascinating character. You're a nice man, and I've met you a couple of times now, and you've been nothing short of gentlemanly. And you know, whenever we have a conversation, it's very helpful. I like the fact that you're a family man, and as I say, when I last spoke to you, you were watching Gareth sing live, who works for us, and I mean, he's a credit to you. He really is. Recently, I saw you welcome him out of the water after his charity swim, and somebody captured an amazing photograph, because that photograph said so much. And people will look at David Icke sometimes and get, they might get the right opinion, they might get the wrong opinion. I just see a guy who speaks his mind. I'll be honest with you, there's an awful lot of stuff that I believe is true. There's one or two things that I look at and I think, I'm not quite sure about that. And I would imagine that's the majority of people.
There's enough of it, isn't there? I mean, my last book was 355,000 words, so people take what they feel right with and leave the rest. And I'm easy whatever they do. It's their right.
How do you deal with negativity? Because there are. I mean, I put a message on Facebook this morning, and I was surprised to see that there were questions that were doubting. There were questions, and that's not the general consensus of opinion that I've had over the last couple of years. The majority of people say, yeah, David Icke, 80% of what he says I believe in. The other 20% a little bit sketchy, a little bit odd maybe. But you know, this morning there's a lot of antisocial questions that I might put your way, and I want you to answer them purely and simply because I'm sick of hearing about them, and I'd much rather you have the chance to explain.
The thing is, Ian, that how do I deal with negativity? I don't. I couldn't give a damn. I couldn't care less what people think about me. It's absolutely irrelevant to me. And you know, we have this idea that when we say something about someone, that we're saying something about someone, but we're not. Every time we open our mouths, we are saying something, making a statement about ourselves. And thus, those that ridicule or condemn me, having not even read a book, and when you question them, they haven't even got a clue what I'm saying, then they are, for me, making a statement about themselves, not me. The fact that they can, as most people do, construct their opinions of events and people, not based on information, not based on research, but based on, I don't know, what they base their opinions on.
It's their. I would imagine it's their own opinion. I want to come back to.
But that's the point, though, Ian. And this is how people can be mass manipulated in terms of what they believe, because the few can't control the many physically. They can do that in a small area with soldiers on the streets, but you cannot control a population of millions, or in global terms billions, physically. You have to control the population by getting them to think and perceive themselves and the world and events in the way that suits you. It's a mind game, and if we don't break the cycle by doing our own research and asking questions rather than getting them off the peg from the mainstream media and the tabloid newspapers, then we're just babes in arms, that not expressing our opinions, but just becoming a repeater of someone else's opinion. And in this way, those that manipulate that mass opinion control the perception and therefore the behavior of the population. And when you look at the world, it is full of repeaters. I mean, look at journalists. What are they doing? They're taking the official version of events and they're repeating it to the population. The population read it in the newspapers and repeat it to each other. You go to school and you have repeater teachers telling the pupils the way that the system wants them to see the world, and all the teacher is doing is repeating what's in the curriculum. When you've got a situation like with my son Jamie, who was taking a course which included a section in the exam on global warming. It's now called climate change, as the temperatures fall, you'll note. He made the obvious point that any brain cell on active duty would see if they looked at the evidence, that the whole idea of climate change, human-caused climate change, is a scientific insanity. Even some of the advocates are now coming out and saying this. And when he said this to the teacher, that was his opinion, the teacher said, well, actually, I have some sympathy with the fact that global warming is a nonsense. But if you say that in your exam, you ain't going to pass, right? So we have a repeater education system. We have doctors that repeat what they heard at medical school and repeat what the drug rep said when they came round to flog some more drugs. Wherever you look, you're looking at repeaters. And what I've been trying to do for 21 years is put other information into the public arena and say, actually, there's not one way the sun, I was going to say the news of the world, but thankfully I don't have to say that anymore, but it's trying to break this cycle of authority gives you a version of life, you believe it, and it becomes official history. I mean, at one time, because it was the norm, people repeated the fact that the earth was flat and ridiculed anyone who said it was a sphere. And the same is going on now, daily, across the great swathe of subjects. I mean, North Africa. Someone said to me, isn't it great that Libya's free, now Gaddafi's gone? Well, if you knew the real story, then they'd realise that Libya has been hijacked by a force that is behind NATO, that is actually in the process, and you can read it in my books some time ago, of picking off country after country after country by stimulating and engineering protests with agents provocateurs, then condemning the sitting regime for violence against protesters, and then sending the boys in. They've done that in Libya. They're going to do that in Syria. They'll do it in Jordan. They'll do it in Lebanon. They're going for Pakistan now, constantly bombing Pakistan with unmanned planes, which are actually being guided from a joystick near Las Vegas. It's just like a computer game to them, killing people, thousands of Pakistanis, and they want to go for Iran. But when you see the way that what is happening in North Africa and the Middle East portrayed in the media, then people believe it, and they're looking at things happening in the world, and they've got a certain view of it, which is simply a view that is repeating what they've been told to believe. And we have to break that cycle of information so that we can actually see what's really going on, as opposed, and this is the key, what we're told is going on, what we're told to believe, what we're told to perceive, what we're told to have the opinion about, and this is going on all the time. You know, you see these journalists outside Westminster on the news, right? They go onto that bit of green, and they come out, and you'll notice this, Ian, because I was in journalism for a long, long time, and in the 1970s, there were still substantial interviews, and there were still interviews of some substance, of some length, with the people that needed to be questioned, the so-called representatives of the people. But what happens now on the TV news? The newsreader, who I tell you, from experience of being in it, hasn't got a clue what's going on in the world, interviewing a reporter outside Westminster or somewhere else, in Libya maybe, and he hasn't got a clue, because all he can tell the newsreader is what the authorities have told him, and they call it journalism. It's just repeating. And if this cycle's not broken, how the heck are we going to know what's going on in the world, as opposed to what we're told to believe is going on?
So when it comes down to it, there are people that know what's going on, really. But you know, like yourself, I mean, you're one of those people that is constantly telling people this is what's really going on. Why aren't there more of you?
Well, what's really going on is so vast and involves researching so many subjects, which on the face of it, when you start, have no connection to each other, but when you get deep in the rabbit hole, are fundamentally connected. And I have spent the last 21 years full-time traveling to 55 countries now to uncover this. And your journalists, or what pass for them, I don't know how they get it through the Trades Descriptions Act personally, but what they do is they come into work and they cover a story one day, and then the next day they'll cover another story, and they'll cover another story. Bill, get to Libya. You're in Libya for a few weeks. He goes to Libya. I've never been to Libya. And all they can do, in effect, is get so-called information from the authorities, which they then stand in front of the camera and repeat. And I was in a studio once in South Africa, and someone came and read the news. It was all live. And when she'd finished the news, and she'd read it very confidently, this is what's going on in the world, I said, how do you know that? How do you know what you've just read is true? Not a clue. I mean, so it's a situation where the media has been structured to become the propaganda arm of those that control what we call authority.
Is there any country in the world that doesn't have that in place, has something that, you know, better, more honest in place, or is it all the same?
Not
just about
that
everywhere?
I've come across. You see, it's an interesting point and an important one, just to explain how the few control the many. What they've done is create a global version, and this is secret societies and certain families, of a transnational corporation. If you look at a transnational corporation like McDonald's, they have a headquarters somewhere in the world, in America I take it, and in every country they have subsidiaries of that headquarters. And the subsidiaries' job is to operate and introduce into that country what is dictated centrally by the headquarters. Therefore, if you go into a McDonald's in Moscow or Sydney or Johannesburg or anywhere, you pretty much go in the same McDonald's, because it's this corporate web, global web. Well, what this network of families that I've been exposing all these years has done is create a secret society and family bloodline version of that. So you have the center of that web, and it's funny enough, not in America, it's in Europe. Places like the City of London, Paris, Berlin, Belgium, and where NATO and the European Union is. And in each country, there is a network of secret societies and families whose job it is to introduce the centrally dictated agenda in their country. And through this system, I say I've been to 55 countries researching this. Whatever country you go into, you see the same blueprint. And because of this structure I'm talking about, that's why everything is kind of structured the same. And there's another step on from that. The network subsidiary in the country, they have subsidiaries in the towns and the cities and the communities, like on the Isle of Wight. And through that kind of pyramid structure or spider's web structure, those at the center can dictate and manipulate right down through into a country and right down through into a local community like the Isle of Wight. And therefore, you see the same blueprint everywhere. So when you ask me about the media is basically structured the same everywhere. Of course, there are honourable exceptions. There are decent journalists trying to be journalists within a corrupt and rigged system, but of course they pick those off. You see, this is an interesting point of I noticed over the last excuse me, over the last 10 years or so, I don't know whether you have, that there has been a real change in the personalities that are in the dark suit professions of councils and authorities and uniform professions like the police and what have you. And I could see the change had taken place where instead of any lip service to serving the people, like what they call the old school policeman, and the guy who's got the ability, or the lady's got the ability to think for themselves in a situation, they're being picked off, just like the decent journalists are being picked off, and being replaced with this new breed, which are basically sociopathic narcissists and with psychopathic tendencies. And I thought I've seen this personality change in authority and uniforms, but how have they done it? And what they've done is they now have something called psychometric testing, whereby people are asked a list of questions, and through answers to those questions they can assess, and I tell you, I know people who've done it, and it's incredibly accurate. They can assess their personality type. And what they're doing is putting this new breed of personality, attitude to the public, in the positions of authority. They're doing it in America, in Canada, in Britain, throughout Europe. And so now you have this far more brutal police behavior, and you also have these police people and other people in uniforms and dark suit professions who simply cannot think for themselves. They have to consult the rule book. You can see them walking down the street, Ian, because they have a slot in the top of their head, and the rule book is pushed in, and that's it. I'll give you a quick story, right? I could give you so many, but the other day, this film crew came to do a documentary about me, and I was talking about the Isle of Wight trains. I used to love the steam trains, and so we'll get you on a train. So we get on a train at the top of the pier, and they're going to film me, not even talk to me, just film me sitting in a seat, no one else in the carriage, by the way, until we get to the bottom of the pier. What's that, 2 minutes?
Yeah, less than that.
On strides, rule book in the slot. Guard, have you got permission? Have you got permission to film? What do you mean? We need permission to film for 2 minutes on a train. There's no one around. You must not. You can't do that. And he's now on the phone to the bosses. There's people filming. What's filming? And he goes, you can't film. No, my boss said you can't film. And I said, what? Did you not have the ability to think for yourself? He said, it pays my mortgage. So you don't pay your mortgage only with your money then. You pay your mortgage with your right to think for yourself. I mean, it's unbelievable. And a friend of mine the other day, there were people in Trafalgar Square, and they went to do a mass meditation. It's about 150, 200 of them. And they're sitting on the floor or on the steps, and they're sitting there with their eyes closed. The Heritage Police, because we have them now in London, they come over and say, you can't do that. And my friend pointed out that there were people sitting on the same steps who were reading newspapers quietly, and they were having a cup of coffee quietly. So what is the difference between what they're doing quietly and what these people are doing quietly? And the only thing he could say was, it's different. He couldn't explain why, but it's different. And it was fascinating to me, because that's how these rule book in the slot people react, because they are always seriously uncomfortable when something is happening which is not normal. They can't deal with it. So if it's not the norm and it's not the usual, in their minds it must therefore be against the law, or there must be a rule against it. And this is the kind of...
Would it have been different if you'd have been Johnny Depp, or not?
How do you mean?
Well, you on the train. Oh, David.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Johnny Depp going to the island. Oh, film star. You know.
Yeah. But again, you know, the guards got on the train. People don't film on the train, and so
I see what you're saying.
So something's different. So there must be something wrong here, and there must therefore be a refusal of allowing it. And this is not a mentality which has increasingly filled the dark suit and uniform professions by accident. It's been done systematically, because what they're doing, when there's a few, and at the core of this global manipulation, compared with the 7 billion people, it is a few, you have to recruit from your target population to police the target population. And so that's what they do. They divide and rule, and they put people in positions of power. Well, apparent power, you know, because, you know, I've had a few interesting conversations with these officious uniforms in many countries, not just here. And, you know, I point out to them, they have no power. They have no power. I say to them, take your uniform off. Where's your power? Get another job. Where's your power? They don't have any power. The power's in the uniform, because the uniform's an extension of the state. And all they're doing is animating it. And if they weren't doing it, someone else would be, because the power's in the wardrobe, not in them. But people who feel the need to have power over, they're attracted to uniform professions, because it fulfills that need. And it gives them the illusion that they have some kind of power. I mean, there was that... example of there's a thing called the TSA in America that run all the security at the airports, right? And if you want to meet officious I have power people, then, you know, go there. And there was this one guy, he went off his shift at Los Angeles airport, stops in the middle of the departure lounge, starts pounding his chest like a gorilla, and screamed, "I have the power." I mean, that's the mentality you're looking at. Fortunately, it got on the news, and he was sacked. But there are many like him all over the TSA at airports across America, which is why people have found traveling more and more unpleasant, because not just the nature of the security has increased, the personalities of those involved in the security that you have to deal with has dramatically changed.
Where do you get all your information from? That was another question that somebody sent in. You know, obviously you get all this information, and I was just coming off the back of what you said about the media. They're obviously getting their information from somewhere and feeding somewhere. Where do you actually get yours?
Well, the story started for me 21 years ago, and I have come across documents, books, personal experience, people on the inside, and what you do is you take all this information, you look at the common themes, and you then play it out and with further investigation to see if what you're being told is actually happening, and you create this tapestry of interconnected information that allows you to see the world in a totally different way. And the reason that so many people now are coming to my books, and I'm just going to speak in 5 cities in Australia over the next 7-8 weeks, and every single theatre, all the tickets have gone, and I'm still in the Isle of Wight. This is 13,000 miles away. People who only get there information from the mainstream media would think that I've disappeared. If they realized what was going on and the support and interest in what I'm doing worldwide, they would be shocked. And, you know, when I'm traveling, I'm meeting people all the time, because once you have a reputation for this, for putting out suppressed information, people come to you. They, you know, because you're the vehicle for them to get out what they know into the public arena, and so it's a great range of different ways the information comes. Plus the fact that when I started out 21 years ago, it was a very lonely road. There weren't many walking with you, but as a result of I guess 9/11 started the change, and then when weapons of mass destruction weren't found, because they were never there in 2003, even though an invasion was justified that killed and maimed more than 1 million Iraqis, people started getting more and more uneasy, and my goodness me, are they uneasy with the world now? And they started to look at this information, and what that spawned is a massive number of people around the world who are investigating the same stuff. So the sources of information now are it's not about even finding it anymore. It's having the time to process it. And, you know, when you've got a situation which for me some days is surreal, where what was in my books in the mid-90s is now being read on the television news because it's happening, then that has brought also an enormous number of people to my work. Because, you know, when I was walking that lonely road and being ridiculed, couldn't go into pubs even in my home town in Ryde without being laughed at and all the rest of it, that something drove me on. And because we have to say what we believe to be true, otherwise we are engaged in something called self-censorship, whereby instead of speaking your truth, you let the perceptions and views of others who haven't done the research to dictate what you say and don't say. And if you do that, then when what you've uncovered is going to happens, you say, I knew that. People go, oh, yeah, you're just saying that. But because I put it out there, took the ridicule, took the crap from some brain donors, by the way, on this island too, because they do exist, funny enough.
Yeah, don't point at me.
And put it out there. Now I'm reaping the benefit because what I put out there is happening, and that's what you have to do.
The tide has changed.
Absolutely.
It's turned. Like when you go back to that time that you were talking about, you know, I remember watching Wogan. I remember hearing people what they were saying, but it's different. It's different. You've still got your knockers. You've still got your people out there that.
It's the shirt, mate.
You've still got your knockers, but you know there is the tide is changing. There's a lot of people that you meet and they say, David Icke, yeah, 80%. I like what he says. 80%. Not too sure about the rest, but maybe that will come.
The thing is, Ian, as you know, the only way you're not going to have, well, not even this way, but the only way you're going to dramatically reduce people having a go at you for something is to stare at the wall and do nothing. And then someone will say it's terrible that he's staring at the wall, not doing anything. So really, we need to speak our truth. We need to express our uniqueness, whatever it is, without having our uniqueness and what we wish to say dictated by the fear of what other people think, because that's the prison that most people live in. It's not, well, I'd like to say this, or I really believe this. It's like, well, how do I say this in a way that's acceptable to these people so they won't think I'm crazy? I couldn't care less. Some people who think I'm crazy, you know, I'm going, oh, thank goodness for that, because if they think you're not crazy, you must be in real trouble. I mean, some of the you know, the people who haven't got two brain cells to rub together who just ridicule you. I mean, why should I worry about that? Why should I be concerned? Because why would I? I say what I believe. I write what I believe. I back it up with very, very detailed evidence, and people make of it what they will. I couldn't care less than what they make of it. It's their right to make of it whatever they choose.
There's a lot of stuff that's happened, and you know, you've obviously been proved right. What about the ones that maybe you got wrong? Is there anything you got wrong in the past? You think, I wish I'd not said that, or I wish that didn't come true.
There was a period when all the ridicule was going on, and this is a very long story, where things were happening to me where I didn't know what planet I was on. You know, when you see me on the Wogan show in 1991, I didn't know what planet I was on, because things were happening. It was like you know, when you live in a bubble and suddenly the bubble bursts, and most people live in a bubble of perception. And then suddenly something comes along, bursts the bubble, and you realize that your perception was the size of a pea compared with actually what is happening and all the rest of it, and what there is to know. And there was a period of about 3 months in that around the Wogan show, where I didn't know what was going on. And then after about 3 months, it was like, I tell you, I've described it like this. You know, when you press too many keys on a computer, it freezes. Why? Because it's being given so much information, it cannot process it. Well, that's what happened to me around the time of the Wogan show. When the bubble burst, symbolically, my mind was filled with an explosion of information, concepts, perceptions, and processing it, where it was like, sorry, too much, can't do it. But after about 3 months, suddenly it was like the computer unfroze. And I was the guy I was before. And people were saying to me, I thought you'd gone mad. You're the same David Icke I used to know. Well, I seemed to be, but I wasn't. Because the way I saw the world had completely changed. And since that time, in 1991, of course, you're going to get little detail and stuff wrong here and there. But the themes since then have shown themselves to be accurate by the fact that they've happened, you know. And like as I've said earlier, you know, I'm watching what's happening in North Africa and the Middle East, not from a daily update on the TV news, but from what I learned years ago was this agenda. Because when you are going to do something, you're going to hijack a country, you're going to take over great swathes of land and resources. Libya just happens to have the biggest known oil reserves in Africa.
We have to take a break.
Okay, if that's okay. Just very quickly, when you know that you want to do that, you have to find an excuse to do it, because you can't just say, hey, we want to go into Libya for the oil and all that stuff, because people will say, what are you doing? So you have to find an excuse. You can't just say, well, we're going to take over Syria. We've decided, we've had a meeting. No, you can't do that, because people will say, what are you doing? So you have to find an excuse. And so I'm seeing the excuses where people who haven't done the research are seeing credible explanations for what's happening. Although more and more people aren't, by the way. A lot of people are waking up and seeing that what they're told is a load of nonsense.
Predominantly, I think when we do a phone-in and we talk about Libya and we talk about Iraq, I think they're all with you on that. I think the majority of people are...
Yeah, there's a lot of... I mean, it's a totally different world now, from my perspective, because so many more people are awake to this, and you're not talking to a closed door anymore.
No. I mean, there's so much I want to ask you, but we've got to take a break and we'll come back. And I want to talk about Ted Heath, I want to talk about Iran, I want to talk about America and China and money.
I'll talk to you about America and China in another way as well.
Okay.
And which is related to the Middle East.
And chemtrails too. Somebody mentioned chemtrails.
No problem.
Okay.
Good stuff.
We'll come back in a moment. It's 20 to 12. This is Vectis Radio. David Icke is here, and I just want to ask you, David, because we just sort of touched on it during the commercial break. Because you ruffle a lot of feathers, and you do. I mean, I've ruffled a couple, but nowhere near as many as you. You mentioned during the commercial break you've never had a death threat. Are you a concerned man?
No.
When it comes down to
couldn't care less.
No.
You know, what's the worst thing that can happen? Someone kills me. I'm terrified. You know, the body's just a vehicle for consciousness, the real self, awareness, pure awareness, to experience this reality. It's what I call a genetic spacesuit. It just allows us to interact with a range of frequencies, which is all this world is, a range of frequencies called visible light in the electromagnetic spectrum. So the worst that can happen is I leave the body and carry on my eternity like everyone else in another reality. I mean, I'm terrified. Look, my legs are knocking. I mean, and you know, I made a decision 21 years ago that I was going to go for this, and I am, and I'll keel over eventually still doing it. Because you can't understand what's happening in the world, and the horror for our children and grandchildren. Not even that, those more so in terms of years, but we're in a time scale now where it's actually happening and affects everybody. And if people think the Big Brother state is terrible now, well, they've seen nothing yet. You know, what is planned would make George Orwell wince, and as I've been explaining for a long time. And when you know that, Ian, that you can't just walk away and say, I've had enough. I'd like to, many times, because, you know, it's very challenging doing what I do. But you can't, because you can't sit there and see what you know is happening unfold in front of your eyes while you've got your feet up. You've got to do what you can, and that's what I am doing. And thankfully, it's starting to have a very, very significant effect worldwide. I mean, you know, there are apparently 250 million websites on the web. DavidIcke.com is in the top 5,000 in America and the top 6,500 in the world, and that's well under 2 decades after I couldn't walk in a pub without being, ridiculed or walk down the street. So,
are there rival David Ickes? Are there no other people like you around at?
Well, as I said earlier, Ian, you know, and you know, round of applause. You know, it was a lonely road, but now there's people all over the world who are doing or investigating elements of it. But you know, this is such a big tapestry. The rabbit hole goes so deep. And it goes into areas which people who read The Sun would think were bizarre, but actually aren't. They're actually very logical. And thus, I connect dots across a mass of different subjects, everything from the nature of reality to banking scams, engineered wars, the whole shebang. And therefore, there's not many doing that. But thank goodness there are staggering numbers of people who are investigating and communicating parts of the story, often large parts of the story. And my goodness, thank goodness for that, because we need that, and we want more people to do it.
I want to ask you about Ted Heath, because Ted Heath is there, prominent on your website.
Yeah.
You say he was a murderer?
Well, no, I say he was and I wrote this in a book called The Biggest Secret in 1998. That he was, and he was alive for a long time after the book came out.
A child killer.
Yeah, he was a serial child killer. He was a serial child abuser, and he was a high practicing Satanist.
And nobody has knocked on your door and said,
well,
right.
some strange lady who seems to have a lot of problems, who's, I think whether she still does, used to write for the county press, did a knocking article on the book, The Biggest Secret, when it came out. She came to my home. I didn't know she was who she was, deeply unpleasant. And I treated her with respect and talked to her about the book. She then writes this knocking article in the county press. But in the course of that, she rang Ted Heath, this nice old man, I think she said in her article, and asked him, or read the passage from the book where I'm saying that he's a multiple child-killing Satanist. And over the years, I've had endless confirmations of that. I used to do a lot of it on the Isle of Wight, by the way, because there's a heck of a lot of that goes on the Isle of Wight. So much so that a few years ago, the News of the World, God rest its soul, did a 2-page spread, as we talked about earlier, about the scale of Satanism on the Isle of Wight. Because this Isle of Wight mafia that manipulate through things like the Freemasons, that manipulate through the council, that run drugs, that launder drug money through properties and many other scams. A lot of them are also into Satanism, and you look at the island, lovely place, beautiful landscape, but give them time, and behind that facade, unbelievable things go on, and a lot of Satanists come to the Isle of Wight, and Ted Heath certainly did that under the cover of yachting, and it's amazing how when you get to the upper echelons, well, actually, in theory, the upper echelons, actually the cesspit levels of a human society, you know, the positions of power and all the rest of it, the number of Satanists, pedophiles, and pedophiles that you find is staggering. And this is why, you remember the case in Belgium which broke when those children were found murdered, and it was called the Dutroux case. He was procuring children for famous politicians and people in power in Belgium, and Belgium is a real centre for paedophilia and child abuse and Satanism, for a simple reason. That's where NATO is, and that's where the European Commission is, and so a small country like Belgium has a massive ratio to population of people like this that I'm talking about, and so they have an insatiable demand for children. This guy up in Dunblane, Thomas Hamilton, the reason the cover-up inquiry ordered that papers relating to that case were going to be locked away for like 100 years, a ridiculous amount of time, is because he was procuring children. He was a paedophile himself, Thomas Hamilton. He was procuring children for famous politicians that are on the news all the time at that time, and some of them still are. I say to people, the world is not just a little bit not like we think it is. The world is nothing like we think it is. And in the we've got 10 minutes left. One thing I'd like to mention, because it's so important, is where the North Africa, Middle East thing is going. I've been writing for at least since the mid-1990s that the plan is for a third world war, and that's where we're heading. The third world war, as I wrote back in the mid-90s, is designed to be triggered out of the Middle East, and this is where this is all leading. In fact, the Third World War has already begun. It's just not been officially declared. It began on September the 11th, 2001, when a engineered terrorist attack orchestrated by Mossad, CIA, and that sort, and military intelligence in America, was used as the excuse to start picking off country after country. Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya. They're now bombing Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia. Like I say, with joysticks in an airbase near Las Vegas, where what they call in America soccer mums go up and pick the kids from school and then go back and have lunch at that, and then come back and get hold of the joystick and start killing more people thousands of miles away through these unmanned drone bombers. And so the Third World War has happened. It's just not been officially declared. And as I said in the mid-1990s, the plan is to bring the NATO countries, Europe and America, Canada, into a war against Russia and China. And I said, watch for the emergence of China, which was China was quite, low-key at the time. Look at it now. It owns America, basically, the debt. And when you follow it, as I do daily, already the Chinese and Russian militaries are getting closer and closer and doing joint exercises. And it's got to the point already where China has said, mess with Pakistan, which has a border with China, and you mess with us. And you're going to see this move on, because that's what they want to do. Because the structure they want globally is a world government dictating to all countries, a world central bank dictating to all countries' economies. This is why they crashed the economy in 2008, and they're going to crash it big time again in the next cycle, because it's a technique that I call problem, reaction, solution. You create the problem, you get the unquestioning media I was talking about earlier to tell the people the version of the problem that you want them to believe, i.e. Bin Laden orchestrated 9/11, etc. And then you get the people at stage 2 to react do something. This can't go on. What are you going to do about it? And then at stage 3, you, who've covertly created the problem and blame someone else, offer the solutions to the problems you've created. And I said in a book called And the Truth Shall Set You Free in 1994, I wrote that, to watch for NATO to start operating outside its official sphere of influence, or operation, which was the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Yeah. It's now in Afghanistan, and it's of course bombed constantly through the summer Libya, and now they're talking about taking on Syria. And one of the other things, it's world government, it's World Central Bank, and having crashed the economy, they're now saying what I said they'd say in 1994 or 5, we need a World Central Bank to sort out the problem, reaction, solution. And they also want a world army to impose the will of the world government on any country that doesn't want to accept what it dictates. And that's what NATO is. The reason that America, France and Britain started bombing Libya and then immediately handed it over to NATO was to set the precedent again of NATO becoming the world army. When you keep constantly hearing politicians like Cameron and Obama talking about the world community, right, or the international community, that's just code for world government. I mean, the UN Security Council, to a very large extent, is the security arm of a world government, and the way that nations are being, or the sense of nation is being eroded all around the world. So basically, I see articles all the time. What is it to be British anymore? It's just like that whole culture's gone. Is because they want to bring an end to countries, and they want the world government at the top of the structure. Then they want the European Union, the American Union, the African Union, which they already have, a Middle East Union, and a Pacific Union, which is the Far East and Australia, New Zealand, under there. And then under that structure of Orwellian control, they want to break countries up into regions to de-unify in a unified response to that edifice of power above. And that's why maps out of the European Union have appeared in the newspapers over the last few years, in which Europe is broken up into regions, in which Britain is broken up into regions, and not that the regions of Britain are together. They're getting some regions of Britain, like in the south, and they're connecting them to regions in France and Scandinavia under another grouping authority. And this, people say, that's crazy. Well, it is if you think that these people are there to serve you. But it's not crazy if you realize that what they want to do is to break Europe and the world up into countries, up into regions, because that's what they're doing. There's the map to show you. They want to do the same in America as well and break that up. How much of a time scale are we talking about here? Are we talking about in the next 5-10 years? Or if we do not get off our backsides, disconnect the arse from the sofa, and pull back the concentration on X Factor and game shows and start to look around and have some peripheral vision and then start to do something about it collectively, then within 10 years we will live in a global society that will be very, very close to Orwell's 1984. And in 1984 Orwell said that in his novel, and I explain in my books that it wasn't actually a novel. I know where he got his information from, that this was coming. He said that there was this perpetual war going on in his 1984 society, and the perpetual war was to keep people divided and ruled. Now, we have that perpetual war. It's called the war on terrorism. When do you know a war on terrorism has ended? You don't. When you invade a country, someone wins eventually. How do you say the war on terror is over? You don't. It's the perpetual war, and that's why they chose that. And people are increasingly feeling uneasy about the world, but they can't put their finger on what it is.
Do you know what? That is something that I've been thinking for the last 18 months. Maybe I woke up, disconnected my bum from the sofa, and that's something that I'm asking myself all the time now.
Well, I'll tell you something that's interesting. I came across a mass mind control manual for these people, written by these people to train other people, which explained, it was called Quiet Weapons for a Silent War. And it was about mass social engineering and perception manipulation. One of the things it says in that manual, by the way, is about the population: keep them busy back on the farm with the runner animals. In other words, get them so focused on surviving, or if they have money, on, you know, diverting their attention into things that take their attention away. And another thing it said was, people, what they call silent weapons are situations, manipulating situations to get a reaction and a response that you want. And it said, you know, people instinctively, and this was found back in the 1980s, people instinctively feel, when the silent weapons are applied to them, that something's not right in the world. But because it said, because of the nature of the silent weapon, they cannot put their finger on what it is. And what I've been trying to do for the last 21 years is do the research, which, you know, most people can't do because they're trying to earn a living. A lot of people don't do because they can't be bothered. But anyway, to connect the dots and to say, look, this is why you're feeling uneasy about the world, because this is what's going on, and this is how the dots connect. And when you do, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You've got pieces all over the table, and it doesn't seem to be anything. Then you put a few pieces together, and you start to get a bit of a feel for it, where it's leading. After 21 years, there's a lot of pieces in place. And when you see it from that perspective, you are looking at a picture that extraordinarily accurately explains why the world is and what's happening in the world now. But don't ask Hugh Edwards what is going on in the world, because he probably doesn't know what's going on in his own studio. And people like him. There's a guy called Ben Brown who's been reporting. It says here, reporting. And I've got a dictionary, what reporting, you know, definition, from Libya. Clueless about what's going on. But of course he stands there, and if you do it confidently, he knows what he's talking about. No, he doesn't. He's just confidently telling you what someone's told him.
We're running out of time,
so don't look to those people to tell you what's going on. Find out yourself.
Okay, we're running out of time, but I just want to say that there's obviously a lot of people out there that ignore everything and just get on with their lives,
right?
Because maybe that truth that you've painted, that story that you've painted, whether it's truth, whether it's a story, is just too, I don't know, they just don't want to face up to it.
No, they
it's
don't.
Scary.
They don't want to face it. And let me give you a final thought. You are told that a tornado's coming.
Right.
You don't want to face that. So in the sand, and you stick your head in it, right? Because you don't want to face the fact that a tornado's coming. But your head may be in the sand, and you can't see the tornado coming, but your bum is still in the air, and the tornado's still coming. Now, if you get your head out of the flipping sand, turn around and face it, you can take avoiding action. Because if you don't face it, eventually your backside's going to be spinning 50 feet in the air, and you're going to not be able to take avoiding action. That's basically the decision we have to make. Are we going to face this in an adult way with a bit of bloody backbone, or are we going to ignore it, hoping it go away? I tell you, it ain't going away. We have to deal with it now.
Most people will ignore it because they're too busy watching X Factor, they're too busy watching Jedward on Big Brother. I mean,
well, in that case, mate, they're better prepare for their backside spinning 50 feet in the air, symbolically, because it's going to.
I remember you saying we were down at Ryder Regatta, and you said this, not just this nation, but the world, the people of this world have got to wake up.
Yeah, well, compared with 21 years ago, mate, enormous numbers of people have and are all over the world, but it's still nothing like the majority, because the majority either couldn't care less, don't want to look at it, or are just preoccupied with the diversions put before us to make us focus in one direction so the manipulators can do what they like behind our backs. And, you know, humanity in so many ways, asleep humanity, are like a moth flying around a light on the porch. They're so mesmerized by the light, game shows, football, all this stuff, they can't see the guy creeping up behind them with a swatter to smack them on the bum.
It's a great way to end. Thanks very much for coming in.
Pleasure, Ian.
We've only scratched the surface.
Anytime, yeah.
We didn't get to talk about the riots. We didn't get to talk about the
riots. Let me tell you about the riots. Problem, reaction, solution. If you want to increase police powers, you can't just do it. And we've had a discussion. We're going to increase police powers. So people go, what do you mean? What do you mean increase police powers? What's this about? All this about? So you have the riots. This is why, you know, as so many people, onlookers and others said, that the police just bloody stood there for the first 2 or 3 nights and just let them do it. Let them loot. Because they want a major problem. And sources inside the police have said, look, mate, we were just told to stand there and observe and not get involved. And so they create the problem. And what happens? In comes Cameron and this ludicrous lady May, the Home Secretary, and say, because of the riots, ABC have got to go with curfews and more powers and all the rest of it. And you know the irony? I'll tell you the irony of the riots. It's that David Cameron stood up on his high bloody horse and said, condemned the rioters, condemned what went on, and he said, the trouble is, people have no respect for life and property. And you know, when he'd finished that, he went away and got the latest report on the pepper bombing of Tripoli, killing thousands of civilians, and they're doing it. They'll do it in Sirte now, and probably still are. So, Tony Blair condemned people. He came out over these riots. Oh, it's social problems and it's no respect. This is the guy who lied to send the boys into Iraq that killed and maimed more than 1 million Iraqi civilians. These people are beyond hypocritical, and we need to sort them out, because if we don't, they'll sort us out.
David, thank you for coming in.
Thanks, pleasure.
It's been fantastic.